Hi, everyone.
Hi again. We're in Ignatius, who wrote around 15 to 115 AD. Yes, he's after the apostles, but not by more than a decade or two. So it's telling that so many ex-witnesses as well as witnesses just reject all of this as being marked by apostasy. Why would I pay attention to the church fathers? The answer is right in the text, if you just read it, which is no, they are fighting the fight for apostolic doctrine and saying these doctrines, these other doctrines, these Judaizing doctrines, which, by the way, Jehovah's Witnesses often follow, these Judaizing doctrines are the real threat to the faith, not new light coming from outside.
Yeah. So I think, too, the fact that the early church fathers, you can get most of the New Testament just reading the early church fathers. So you can say they're sticking to the word.
Yeah.
The word that you accept as New Testament.
So you've been sold a lie if you're a Jehovah's Witness or an ex-witness that still believes that the early church went apostate. It changed in certain structures, and we see one of them right here in the insistence that your bishop is your safety.
Yeah.
And the elders, not just the bishop, the elders that are already in place from the apostolic times, these are your safety. But on doctrines, they're very insistent that we not lose the apostolic teaching. You'll see that right in this text from Magnesia, the letter to the Magnesians. We're in the third part of it.
Is it? Oh, okay.
So we're going to do chapters, usually just one paragraph, aren't they?
Yeah.
From 8 to 11, the chapters here, 4 paragraphs.
So we'll read it from my translation first?
Maxwell Staniforth's translation. We'll also read from Robertson Donaldson's translation of the Ante-Nicene Fathers, and Lightfoot a little bit too. This guy who is the source on the Apostolic Fathers.
Okay. All right. Never allow yourselves to be led astray by the teachings and time-worn fables of another people. Nothing of any use can be got from them. If we are still living in the practice of Judaism, it is an admission that we have failed to receive the gift of grace. Even the lives of their divinely inspired prophets were instinct with Jesus Christ. Indeed, the only reason they were persecuted is because they were inspired by His grace, so that they might convince future unbelievers of the existence of one sole God who has revealed Himself in His Son, Jesus Christ, word of His own from silence proceeding, who in all that He was and did gladdened the heart of the one who sent Him.
Just pause there for a second. Roberts and Donaldson have who is His eternal word.
Okay.
So the Judaizers that he's already mentioned are denying that. But we'll get back to this later.
And that makes you think of the book of John.
It sure does.
Which talks about the word.
And it makes you think of Jehovah's Witnesses' official teaching.
Yeah.
That he's not the eternal word, he's the equivalent of Adam.
Yeah. Whereas...
a faithful Adam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. 9. We have seen how former adherents of the ancient customs have since attained to a new hope, so that they have given up keeping the Sabbath, and now order their lives by the Lord's Day instead. The day when life first dawned for us, thanks to Him and His death. That death, though some deny it, is the very mystery which has moved us to become believers and endure tribulation to prove ourselves pupils of Jesus Christ, our sole teacher. In view of this, how can it be possible for us to give Him no place in our lives, when even the prophets of old were themselves pupils of His in spirit, and looked forward to Him as their teacher? Indeed, that was the very reason why He, who they were rightly awaiting, came to visit them and raise them from the dead. This is 10, chapter 10. Do not let us be blind to His goodness, then. If He were even to imitate the way we ourselves behave, it would be all over with us. Now that we have become pupils of his, let us learn to live like Christians. To profess any other name but that is to be lost to God. So lay aside the old good-for-nothing leaven, now grown stale and sour, and change to the new, which is Jesus Christ. Have yourselves salted in him, and then there will be no scent of corruption about any of you. For it is by your odor that you will be proved. To profess Jesus Christ while continuing to follow Jewish customs is an absurdity. The Christian faith does not look to Judaism, but Judaism looks to Christianity, in which every other race and tongue that confesses a belief in God has now been comprehended. Chapter 11. In pointing these things out to you, my brothers, it is not that I know of any of you being actually affected in this way. It is simply that I am anxious, in all humility, to warn you in good time of the pitfalls of this shallow teaching. I want you to be unshakably convinced of the birth, the passion, and the resurrection, which were the true and indisputable experiences of Jesus Christ, our hope, in the days of Pontius Pilate governorship. God grant that none of you may ever be turned aside from that hope.
Wow. And the last part is perhaps the most significant for our analysis of whether or not there was an apostasy in the days of Ignatius, because you leave him out as well as the later fathers. He's taught by the apostles. He's talking to churches that are founded by the apostles, Paul and Timothy and John, although Timothy is a appointee of Paul, and then John comes in later and is, well, in Revelation you can see he's the one in supervising the work of the 7 churches of Asia. Now he's writing to some of those churches right here, and look what the gospel is in that last paragraph.
Yeah, sounds very much like the creed.
It sounds repeated. Very much like the Apostles' Creed. He says in the Robertson Donaldson translation, I desire to guard you beforehand, that you fall not upon the hooks of vain doctrine. Obviously he's talking about Judaizing here, with their low Christology, as well as their concentration on works or faithfulness, the law.
Trusting in those things.
Yeah, and then he says, well, what's the gospel then that we're trying to guard here? But that ye attain to full assurance in regard to the birth, passion, resurrection, which took place in the time of the government of Pontius Pilate. Then you realize, well, that's the substance of the Apostles' Creed. 300 years later, about 300 years later, they're preaching that Christ was born of the Virgin Mary, suffered, that's the passion, under Pontius Pilate, whose name is here, notice. So there's 2 names other than Jesus in the Apostles' Creed. Yeah. They are Mary, Virgin Mary, and Pontius Pilate. So the gospel between 100 AD, when he says this, approximately, the generation of 100 AD, the gospel is still the same 300 years later.
And once you know what the false teachings were, you understand why they emphasized the birth and the passion and the resurrection. Because people were going around with theories that, well, he wasn't really human, but he's born of a woman. That's what makes that significance. He came into the world the same as other people come in, born of a woman. And then the death, he really did die. So the theory going around, well, no, he just sort of conjured up himself.
A fake
Jesus. And then he didn't really die.
So the gospel is compromised in several directions at the same time. As soon as you abandon the idea that he was really human, then what value does his atonement have for us?
Right.
He's not got one hand on us and one hand attached to God anymore. He is now either faking it, and Islam, interestingly, has a hybrid. They have him born of a virgin, but not really dying.
Not really dying, yeah.
But these early heretics in Gnostic direction have him not really human at all, and therefore his death was
not really significant because it
wasn't really a death anyway.
Yeah.
It was a going back to what he was before.
Yeah.
Which, interestingly, the Watchtower believes, that he went back to being Michael, an archangel, an angel existence, right?
So I think it's kind of curious that the Watchtower becomes more like the Judaizers than the Christians here. They want to emphasize works, their own set of works, preaching work or whatever, that becomes a necessity for the witness. So with the Judaizers, it was circumcision and keeping the Sabbath and all
keeping
these
the
things.
whole law, really.
This was what you had to rely on for your salvation. Now Jewish Christians, before this time, when they've already been booted out of the synagogue and the temple's gone, were keeping Sabbath, but they weren't relying on it for salvation.
Right.
They were still in community with their Jewish brethren.
Yep.
So they continued to do the Jewish law and the Jewish customs, and it was an opening for them to persuade their Jewish mates, their Jewish family, that Jesus was the Messiah.
But they had, the Jewish Christians, perhaps a lower Christology, at least at first, than Paul and John. So you see that stressed here in the very first paragraph, that he is the eternal Word of God. He's not just another Adam, a faithful Adam. It's the scales that you see continually in the Watchtower's view of the atonement, right? That he balanced what Adam lost. No, that's not anywhere here. Notice the emphasis upon John's teachings in the eternal Word idea. That's not a concept that you read in Paul or anywhere else in the New Testament, right? But it is in the Old, in the Targums of the Old Testament. This idea was already there, that the Word was somehow God, but not God at the same time. So that's picked up from both Jewish tradition and from the Greek view, that there's a principle that unites the universe, and that is the eternal logos of God. It's not created logos, it's eternal logos. So this is the best of early Christian thought. It's Paul and John, and you see the Paul influence in several of the other references here. I'm reminded of Paul in Romans 14 when he's talking about if people want to keep the Sabbath, if they're Jews and they keep the Sabbath, as long as they don't insist that you must if you're a Gentile, or you must if you're a Jew.
And I think Galatians, he talks a lot about this in Galatians, and it's putting your trust in these practices, in doing these things, and that way rejecting grace.
Yes.
That your sins are forgiven. Your new path is through Christ, really, for salvation. Yeah,
and I like the fact that in the first two paragraphs, Ignatius is emphasizing that grace is in the Old Testament. This is not a New Testament thought. It's, as we discovered when we went through Genesis and all the other prophets 35 years ago, it's Old Testament from beginning to end. The law is not the centerpiece. The covenants with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob before the law are the foundation of the faith of true Judaism as properly practiced.
And that's why you can look at the lives of the patriarchs and forward and see things that don't seem to gel, and as a witness you think, well, he should have been disfellowshipped for doing that, for lying, for murder, for adultery. And yet God's still using them, working with them. Yeah. So we just didn't see the grace elements in the Old Testament when we were witnesses. But it's definitely there, but he keeps on promising those initial promises that are God's faithfulness.
Yeah.
To those people.
I do think we should not forget to emphasize here, though, two thoughts that Ignatius emphasized. One is that, this is the Lightfoot translation, therefore, having become his disciples, let us learn to live in accordance with Christianity. I checked all three translations, and I checked the Greek against them, and yes, there is a word, Christianity, at the turn of the 2nd century.
Yeah.
So for all those ex-witnesses out there who think Christian and Christianity are concepts that came with Christendom, They're already there at 100 AD.
Yeah.
And he's saying that's the way you should think about yourselves. He says in the next sentence, whoever is called by any other name than this one, Christian, does not belong to God. That's pretty emphatic.
Yeah.
And then there's the statement about the Lord's Day. There's an entire religion or two, including a lot of people who are ex-witnesses, by the way, who are into the Jewish roots movement, who are teaching that the law must be observed by Christians as far as possible. And they're distancing themselves from Christians who say, no, that's not a Christian position. And they will even say that the Lord's Day is a late substitution for the Sabbath. We should be keeping the Sabbath, and we should be keeping it on the seventh day, not the eighth day.
I'd read Romans 14 and I'd read Galatians 1-4.
But what does Ignatius say here? This is Lightfoot's translation. If then those who had lived in antiquated practices came to newness of hope, no longer keeping the Sabbath, but living in accordance with the Lord's Day, on which our life also arose through him. So it's obvious that there was a contest even then between those who said, no, the Sabbath is the day, and the Lord's Day, which of course is the first day of the week. So don't buy the lie that has been told to a lot of ex-witnesses by other ex-witnesses that this is part of our compromise with paganism, that we took over a different day, the day of the sun, Sunday. Obviously, the first day of the week is the sacred day for Christians, even 100 AD.
It's the resurrection day for them to see new birth.
Yeah. And
the opportunity of new birth because of Christ's death.
And in case you're thinking right now, but that's post-apostolic. Look at 1 Corinthians 16, where we're told, when get together on the Lord's Day, what do? You take a collection. Well, the church is still doing that 2,000 years later. So they're gathering for both communion and for all other church practices on the Lord's Day, which is first day. What's our link?
Our link is a video called Why Did the Romans Destroy Jerusalem?
George Caird, the teacher of Tom Wright, is discussing the Jews took for granted a permanent relationship with Rome. And it was built around their economic advantages that they offered to Rome. And for a while that worked, centuries that worked, and then it didn't work anymore. So what changed just before the Jewish War of 66 to 70? See you next time.
Bye.